Happy Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Had a little bit of a minor brain fart there as we're opening things up. Wife's out of town. Nate's been sick for a week and a half. I am running on fumes, but I got fantasy stuff for you guys. So at least there's that, right? Yep. I'm Dan Besbris. Thanks so much for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. You can also follow our network at Old Man Squad, which it sounds like may be acquiring additional shows here over the next couple of weeks. Very exciting. We're also set to launch a few more between now and the start of the basketball season. Good things at the Old Man Squad. Please drop a like on the show as we're settling in. YouTubers, that's mostly for you guys. If you have a comment, feel free to throw that in the comments section. I get to all of those eventually. A little slower now than it was a week ago, and as we get towards the season, it's going to get harder and harder. But right now, like, comment, that's all really easy. And subscribe, obviously, if you guys enjoy what we're doing over here. Today, we're talking safe winners in fantasy basketball. It's kind of a weird topic and one that I had kicking around in my head for a bit, and I thought, is there a way to turn this into a show? And the answer I decided ultimately was just to go with yes. I don't know if this is right or not, but I'm going to do it. And the premise here on today's show is that we've got 10 players that I believe are kind of lower upside. A couple of them have a little bit more than low upside, but like low and then a maximum level of medium upside. But they're almost guaranteed to be small wins in a worst-case scenario on draft day. And does it make sense to kind of stockpile guys like this? We'll talk it through as we go. I don't know that there's an obvious yes or no answer, even as I'm beginning the program today, but that's the idea. So let's start talking about some of these players, and then you guys will kind of see what I mean in all of this. And the first one is James Harden. James Harden is someone that I've talked about a lot. He's currently pre-ranked at 18. We're going to go on the Yahoo second iteration board. And, of course, when they mess their board up here in a week or two, we'll redo some of this stuff. But right now, James Harden is at 18. He's generally going a little bit in front of that. And the reason I think he's kind of a relatively safe play with an expected final rank inside the top 15 is that, look, there's not a lot of room for him to go blitzing past a pre-rank of 18 or an ADP that is moving towards 16, 17 range. I think that's probably where it's going to end up when all's said and done. But we're talking about a guy that ended up playing 72 games last year. And most of the games he missed was at the very beginning of the season because he had asked himself out of a situation. And I know that a lot of you immediately hear that and think, what's to stop him from doing it again? Well, first of all, he's from Los Angeles, so he's home. And there's been no indication that he's unhappy with his role, with his contract, with whatever that he has with the Los Angeles Clippers right now. When James Harden wants to make it through a season, historically, he has done so. When he hasn't wanted to make it through a season, historically, he hasn't come close to doing so. Generally, though, the games played for Harden are not that bad. Fat Suit Harden was, I think you would argue, the big exception, and then wanted to get out of basically each of his last few spots. And so I think sometimes Harden's quote-unquote durability gets conflated with his actual desire to play. Because if you look, and I know some of this is an age thing as well, but this past season, once he got going, he pretty much didn't miss a game. I don't remember the exact number for him, but he was basically there almost every single night from the moment he got traded. He was inactive until November 6th, which I think was like 5 or 6 games into the season, something like that. Played his first game with the Clippers on November 6th, and then just started racking up games played. He missed 2 games in March and 2 games in April, or 3 games in April, which was basically an end-of-season shutdown. For all intents and purposes. He might have been a little bit banged up. I don't know. But he played in the playoffs. He missed 10 games last year, 3 of them were basically end of season, doesn't really matter kind of zone. 4, at least, possibly 5, were at the beginning of the year due to asking out of Philadelphia, I think. And 2, basically, were in the middle of the season. So once he got going last year, James Harden basically played in every game except for 2. He played 9 minutes, but 10 minutes in that penultimate game of the season. So that was like a big fat who cares kind of game. So he basically missed the last 4. So this is a guy where, again, we have mushed together, inaccurately, mind you, injury and desire. He didn't want to play at the end of his Houston tenure, so he didn't. COVID year in Houston, he played 68 out of 72 ball games. The following year, he played 8. That was in his Houston fat suit. He got himself out of town. And then he was in Brooklyn, and then the whole Kyrie thing exploded, and then he wanted out of Brooklyn. By the way, he still ended up playing like a kind of okay number of games. He missed 17 that year, but it wasn't, it's not a great number, but also compared to some of these guys, it's not that bad. And then he wanted out of Philadelphia. The 58 games with Philly in the year before he asked out was kind of a little bit of 2 different things. That's the one season where I'd point out and go, like maybe he was a little bit banged up that year. But still, he's back up to 72. And again, without the trade demand, he was basically at 77 this last year. And without the shutdown, he was basically at like 81. That's not entirely true. It was like 79, something like that. So we're talking about a guy who basically played every game he was expected to play this past season. And he doesn't jump, which has always been good for him. Yeah, he's old, but I think he's way safer than people give him credit for, and that's why he's the first name on the list. We're going to go through this chronologically, by the way. The next name on the board is Freddie VanVleet at 38, is another player that I think we've perhaps, again, kind of conflated things. Lack of durability with maybe more so a situation. Not that he wanted out, necessarily. He was loving his time with the Raptors, and his minutes per game in Houston wasn't really all that different, but he's a guy who plays a crap ton of minutes, and that's where you get sort of the bumps and dings and bruises and all that stuff. But Freddie's not as old as I think everybody would like to think. Like, he's not young. He's 30, so he's not a little kid anymore, but he's not like way back on the back end of his prime. He played 73 out of 82 games this last year with the Rockets. He doesn't have to do quite as much in Houston as he did in Toronto. The assists are up. The scoring is down. That's fine. The defensive stats were weird last year because they gave him blocks where he probably should have had steals, but I expect that to be fine this coming season. His efficiency was better than it has been in about 4 seasons because he didn't have to be the guy taking all the bad shots at the end of a ball game. So his effective field goal percent got better, even though, the peripheral stats didn't really change for him all that much. And frankly, he could be better at the free throw line than he was this last year. Career 87%, or he shot 86%. And for the previous 3 years, he was at 89, 87, and 90. Is there a boatload of upside with Freddie VanVleet? This is one where I actually think there is a little bit of upside, maybe tempered a tad by the fact that he plays too many minutes. And it's why I have VanVleet listed as top 20 as final rank, inside the top 20. To me, Freddie VanVleet is one of the most obvious plays on the board where he's going. You're seeing him go earlier in some of the industry mock drafts. I don't know if that's going to carry over to the public drafts, but I like Freddie VanVleet as my number 2 guy here. I shouldn't say number 2. This, again, is chronological order. This is not an order of how I like them. This is just names that jumped out as, in my opinion, guys that are likely to beat their mark. Jalen Williams is the next name on the board. He's another one that has a little bit of upside built in, but maybe we've overhyped the upside on Jalen Williams. I love him dearly, like a son. And in the second half of last year, he was top 35 on 20 points, 4 boards, 4.7 assists, 2 combined defensive stats, 53.5% from the field, 79.5% at the free throw line, 1.63 pointers. I don't actually know that he's going to do a ton more than that, because that was the whole, that was after they had basically unplugged Josh Giddey. When they unplugged Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams got to do a little bit more offensively. Okay. The upside with Williams is, does he do a tiny bit more? Does his steal number go up a little? Does his 3-ball number go up a little bit? We don't know these things to be true. If they happen, swell. That's swell. But we don't need them to, because all he has to do is replicate what he became last year in this sort of current iteration of what the Thunder look like, and he'll be top 35. He's also built his build gives me a lot of confidence. I know he missed a handful of games last year. It wasn't an overwhelming number, but he missed a couple. He was at 71 out of 82. He's a stocky dude, strong. I like that build. I think you get him into the 70s in games this season again. Maybe he even goes a little higher than he was this past season. So I like that from a safety standpoint. I like the minimal upside and the super high floor. I think he's a safe and excellent pick. Tobias Harris at pre-rank of 64 is my next name on the board. Tobias played 70 out of 82 games last year. He's been a pillar of health and consistency for about a decade now, and nobody wants him because he's a low turnovers guy. And for 8-cat or head-to-head, where teams are not really looking at turnovers, he's just a guy that's going to go later than he should. But he averaged 17 points, 6.5 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 0.7 blocks, 1.3 threes. He did it on excellent percentages last year, and he's going to a place where he gets to do more. But let's just say he goes to Detroit, and he's just like, I'm content still doing 14 shots a game, even if I'm not with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. What do we get? A generally pretty damn durable top 50 guy. Just like, is there really any argument? I'll give him a top 45 rank. I think he does do a tiny bit more, but again, we've largely removed injury risk from the equation. He's probably not going to blitz into the top 25. I mean, I guess anything's possible, but again, unbelievably safe floor, typically durable throughout his career, 1 or 2 small blips in there. And yeah, he's getting older, but whatever. And expected to kind of lead the slow boat turn for this Detroit team. I think Tobias is a very safe play with a little bitty bit of upside baked in. This one might surprise you guys. I've got D'Lo at number 78 as actually a relatively safe call this year. D'Angelo Russell last season was number 65 in 9-cat. He played in 76 out of 82 basketball games and quietly had an excellent year and a superlative second half last year. He played in 71 games the year before that, only 65 the season before that one. So that was a little bit screwball. That was the after COVID year. I can't remember if he actually went through a COVID thing that season. He got traded from the Warriors to the Timberwolves the season before. That was the COVID year. And then his last year in Brooklyn, he actually played 81 out of 82 ball games. So trying our best to ignore the weirdness of COVID, he's been, after some injury stuff kind of early in his career, a relatively durable dude, kind of got that sorted out. And the beauty part is he's an amazing and terrific fit for the Lakers during the regular season. I don't care if they don't want to build around him or if they use him in the trade package to get like a Kyle Kuzma or a Zach LaVine or whoever the Lakers are trying to get. Wherever D'Lo goes, he's going to keep chucking. He's a good scorer who hits a ton of threes at a high clip. He can pass. He gets some steals. Used to be higher, not as many as it used to be. And he's a good foul shooter now, which wasn't always the case for him either. Not a massive positive there, but he's no longer a negative. He was at 83% last year on not that many. We're talking about a guy for me in D'Lo who, again, relatively healthy and is probably, and this is the thing, so I've got him as top 65 as expected final rank. There's a chance he goes better than that. The second half of last season, D'Angelo Russell was number 39. He was a mid-4th rounder, or almost an early 4th rounder. 20.5 points, 3.7 threes over that stretch, 6.5 assists, a steal, 44.5 from the field, 87 at the foul line, but, who doesn't take that many, so it's a little bit of a who cares, but it does help. But the Lakers kind of turned him loose, played a ton of minutes, got his confidence back. It was a joyful thing. I think D'Lo is going to be pretty good this year, and I don't care where he ends up. Isaiah Hartenstein at 86. This one feels like a little bit of a gimme, and I almost feel a little bit guilty about putting it in there. But let's approach Hartenstein from more of a worst case scenario angle in this particular show. Because a lot of shows recently we've talked about how high he can go. But I'd almost rather look at it from the opposite side of how low can you go. This is the Hartenstein limbo on today's episode. So Hartenstein last year ended up as number 75 in 25 and change minutes per ball game for the Knicks. He was not utilized much offensively. It was mostly putbacks. He rebounded, he passed, he got steals, he got blocks. He did it on a very nice field goal percent of 64.5 on almost no shots per game, but whatever. And he managed to get his free throws up to a mark that was also not brutalizing fantasy rosters at about 71%. A worst-case scenario for Hartenstein this year is that he and Chet Holmgren share the floor for like 5 to 6 minutes a game. There's no chance they brought him in and paid him $30-some-odd million to not play any minutes alongside Holmgren, because then he's only playing 19 minutes of backup center of ball games. It's not going to be zero. But a worst case is like 4-5 minutes together, and that puts Hartenstein at about 23-ish minutes per ball game. He is still a top 100 guy in about 23 to 24 minutes per ball game. So a worst case scenario this year for Hartenstein is around number 100. He played through a lot of stuff last year, which makes me feel like he's a tough nut. He's done this before. Prior season, he played through a foot injury, and that's why his numbers were down. But he was out there. He was giving you non-zeros, which makes him safer. And I think it's worth noting, there's almost no chance that he only plays 23 minutes a game in OKC. Odds are he's going to be at 25 or more, which is where he was last year, and got him to top 75. He's actually a player that I think is more than just a safe pick, but at 86, he's unbelievably safe because you're getting him just above his floor with some upside built in. Where he's going in drafts right now is about 10 to 15 slots earlier. I'm seeing him go in, at least in expert mocks or with mocks with people that follow me on Twitter, is like around 70. And that's where he becomes more of your sort of prototypical safe play. He's going to probably get around there. He might go a little bit higher than that, but not by much. But you also know he's not going to tank your team. Alex Caruso at number 100. This is a player we haven't talked about much on this show, so it's kind of fun to get into a fresh new name. Caruso last year finished at number 49 in 9-cat. So you're thinking, Dan, why is this like a small, safe winner kind of thing? Well, we don't really know exactly what his role is going to be in OKC. In Chicago, he was taking 7.5 shots a ball game. I don't know if that's a number that goes up or goes down. We really can't know for sure. My guess would be stays close to the same, but we don't know. He went 1.7 steals and 1 block with 2 3-pointers a game. He got really efficient from downtown. Is that a number that sticks or does it slip a little? Probably sticks, but we don't know. Do the steals and blocks stay as high as they were? He's an amazing defender. I love Alex Caruso, and letting him go was maybe the dumbest thing the Lakers have done, perhaps even dumber than the Russell Westbrook trade. But 1 block a game was also way higher than what Caruso's used to in his career. He played 28 minutes a game for these Chicago Bulls 2 seasons prior and averaged just 0.4 blocks per game. So the one felt somewhat anomalous. The steals are repeatable. He's always been in that. If he could get starters minutes, he'd get close to 2 steals per game. That's almost always been the case for him once he started to actually settle into a legitimate NBA role. The blocks were very weird. 3-point percentage has been pretty good, actually, for Caruso, but he's, you never know. There are years where it bounces around. He had a 33 and a 36 mixed in there. This last year was 41. That was super high. So there's a lot of things for Caruso that feel like they could kind of come back to earth a tad. And that's why at 100, I don't think he's a guaranteed 4-round leaper. I think he's more like a guaranteed 2-round leaper, which is not a ton of value for someone drafted near 100. But we also know that he's going to play. OKC went and got him. This was a target for them. They love it. They got a bunch of defense. He's going to soak up a crap ton of minutes, and he's going to be out there doing the Caruso stuff, which translates really well to fantasy But will it be as well as last year? Probably not. Still, it seems like he started to figure out a way to stay on the court. That's a good thing for him. I hope that some of the injury stuff is getting pushed behind him. He was more healthy this last year than he has been in the past. And so that's why he's on the safe board for today. Lost track of a thought. Went 71 out of 82 games last year. That's what I was going to mention. Ivica Zubac at number 106 is the next name on the board. Zubac last year finished at 106. He's going earlier than this, though, in, again, every draft I've done with Twitter followers and with experts. I am curious where he goes when I parachute into a Yahoo public prize league, like in 2 weeks in early October. Is this a phenomenon of, we've created a positive feedback loop where he's just going to go earlier and earlier in all of our drafts that we're all doing with each other? So do I need to do a mock where I don't announce that I'm doing the mock and just sort of incognito that joint? Probably. But good thing about Zubac, this past season, he missed 14 games. His prior 2 years combined, he only missed 12. He played in every single game in each of the 2 COVID seasons, which is kind of remarkable. So over a 4-year span, he missed a total of 12 ball games. I'm assuming he moves back in that direction. He's not an old dude. He's big and strong. He's not a massive leaper, but, he can get off the ground a little bit. And he's going to have a really nice role this season. I'm guessing, frankly, more like the minutes per game we saw, not this past year, but the prior one. The fun story on Zubac is that when he got 28 and a half minutes, not this past season again, this past year he got 26 and change, and that landed him at number 106. The prior year, he played more minutes, but his rank was basically the same. In fact, it was like the tiniest bit lower because they just used him less. I guess his free throw shooting got a little bit better this last year by about 2.5%. But the big change for me was that he got up to 7.5 shots per game this year in fewer minutes. That's the James Harden effect. And the James Harden effect is getting bigger year over year. There is going to be more Harden this season, more pick and roll, where Zubac gets involved. Harden's a better passer than Kawhi Leonard and Paul George by quite a lot. So sure, those guys might call for a screen from Zubac, but they're not that great at getting him the ball where he needs it to be effective. Harden is. He can do that stuff. And so every minute that those two guys share the court together is good for Zubac. That's why I've got him ranked inside the top 90 this year. I don't think his minutes change all that much. Probably still in that 27, 28 range. I don't think he's a guy that they can give 30-plus minutes a ball game. There will be days where they just have to run a little bit smaller. Although, the other good news on Zubac is his backups are worse. Mo Bamba instead of Daniel Tice and Mason Plumlee. But again, I don't need him to play a bunch of extra minutes this year. 1.5, 2, that would be fine. It's the floor with Harden thing that's going to raise him up by one more round, maybe 2 rounds of value. And he's been super durable. That makes him a safe play. 2 more names. Mike Conley at 113. He is old, I know. So from a will he stay upright standpoint, maybe it's not the easiest call in the world. But dude played 76 games last year, rested a few down the stretch. They started to kind of check his minutes in the second half of the season. But he was, like Tyus Jones, kind of an assist-to-turnover darling, a better three-point shooter than Tyus. And there's kind of no reason to think that Conley's role changes all that much. The reason I say that, and I know exactly what detractors are going to be whispering as I go through this explanation. We saw Anthony Edwards trying to run some point at the Olympics. It ain't pretty. It ain't pretty. Ant-Man doesn't have the passing skills yet. Maybe they develop over time, but Conley is still the guy steering the boat for this Minnesota team. They were markedly better in games where he was on the court. It was the same thing that happened in Utah. You get a team of guys together that don't really know where they're supposed to go, and Mike Conley's like, you guys go there, and I will handle the orchestrating. He's the conductor. He doesn't have to get in there and play the instruments all that often, but he's conducting. So 8.5 shots a game is fine. 29 minutes a game is fine. I don't need him to play 33 minutes a night. And even if he does take a small step back just from age, he's still going to be a top 85 guy, which again, not a massive leaper there. A couple of rounds of value at 113, but safe, effective. 6 assists without a ton of turnovers late. Very few guys on the board that are going to give you that at this juncture of a draft. And that's why I still like him. And finally, with a nod to perhaps being the most boring player we're talking about today, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope at pick 133. Nobody wants anything to do with him, and I get it. He's super boring. Last year, he was at 10 points, 1.3 steals, 0.6 blocks, 1.6 three-pointers, which felt, frankly, kind of low for him. But he's a great free throw shooter, and he got signed by an Orlando team that needs defense and floor spacing. I shouldn't say needs defense. They're built on defense, so they're adding more of it, but they badly need floor spacing. Jalen Suggs got better at spacing the floor last year. Paolo is slowly getting better at spacing the floor. Franz did not do a great job of spacing the floor. So now they got a guy who's willing to take a big shot. KCP's been weirdly clutch in his NBA career, despite not being ever really a star-level guy. He's comfortable in those moments. He's a lockdown defender. He fits everything that Orlando's trying to do with their roster. So I expect him to play full starters minutes. He was at 31.5 with Denver last year. That number might even go up. I also expect his number of shots to go up. He was at 7.7 shots per game last year, behind Jokic and Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon, and you could even argue Reggie Jackson at times. And it's kind of the same thing that I talk about with JV. I call this phenomenon, wait, you want me to pass to that guy? I know, maybe not the best name, but with Jonas Valanciunas last year, first of all, his minutes, as we expected, went into the toilet last season. He started really hot. I thought we got that handicap way wrong, and then he got phased out, and he was useless for the second half of the season. But one of the big things with JV this past year and even the year before was that the guys around him in New Orleans got so good that he just didn't feel comfortable being the higher usage guy he used to be during his time at times in Memphis. During his time in Toronto, when he was on the court, it was always, give me the ball, I'll go try to put it in the hoop. JV's on a team now in Washington, and they're going to try to trade him midseason. He's a whole other discussion. But he's going to look around him and say, wait, you want me to pass to that guy? Not a question he asked himself in New Orleans. It was, yeah, I should probably pass to that guy. Zion, Ingram, McCollum, Trey Murphy, all these guys were better. Debatable, I guess. But better options. We'll just say lightly better options on offense on that team. With the Wizards, Kuzma, and then a tumbleweed blows through the podcast. And it doesn't even really matter how good a player is in real life. It's how good JV thinks they are. And I think that's a little bit of what you got going on with KCP right now. Not that he was going to pass up open shots, but in Denver, it was like, well, like if we can get a better look, Jokic is going to get one for these guys. If we can get a better look and Jamal Murray takes it, great. If we can get a better look for Michael Porter Jr. in the corner, he's going to hit like 60% of those damn shots. He's on a team now in Orlando where he looks around and he's like, nah, like me taking this shot is probably the best shot right now for this team. Unless I can get Paolo an open lane to the bucket or Franz a better lane to the bucket, me taking this jumper might be our team's best shot. And it doesn't have to be a big shift. A small one will do. Going from 7.7 shots to like 9 would be enough in my estimation. And so KCP probably claws his way inside the top 100. That's where we've got him here with expected final rank. Again, it is not an overwhelming gain. It might not even be a guy you want on Games Cap Roto because there's not enough positive impact going on there. But he's healthy. He's reliable. He's going to give you non-zero fantasy nights. And he's going to be a small, safe win on draft night as you... I mean, he's literally like the equivalent of taking 2 Benadryl with your last draft pick. You're just like, all right, 20 minutes, I'll be asleep. Here we go, KCP. but he makes sense in certain builds and certain formats. And again, if you say, and this is kind of the case for a lot of these guys, is I'll just flip up the recap page of the names we talked about today. For especially these guys later on the board, like a Conley, a Zubac, a KCP, a Caruso, whatever, I get it. Like Zubac, Conley, KCP, these guys are probably not leaping all that far. Conley's not going to be a top 65 guy again. He's going to slowly move in the wrong direction. KCP, he's not going to jump to be a top 75 guy. These are not big needle movers at the end of the draft. That's not what this show is about. But let's say in the early part of the draft, someone took Freddie VanVleet before you could get to him, and you ended up with Kawhi. Or in the 4th round, someone took Jalen Williams. You ended up going Jimmy Butler, taking a swing, injury risk, upside. If you have like 2 of those guys in the first 5 or 6 rounds, you can't really afford to take all flyers late, because then you're dropping your last 3 picks and 2 of your first 5 are on IL. And so now you're like rotating 5 roster slots on the team. That's a mess. There aren't that many guys out there that you want to rotate in that often. So if you have a bunch of risks early, getting a guy like a KCP or a Conley late is actually, yes, boring, but not a bad idea. It fills in an open roster slot for your team where you can just sort of plug and play. And now you're messing with the open roster slots that came from 2 guys that hit the IL early and 1 flyer you took. So you're messing with 2 to 3 roster slots, reasonable number, instead of 5. Too many. And that's why sometimes these late safe guys are actually kind of okay. I know it's more fun. I know it's more entertaining to go get some kind of big leaper. I get it. And we have shows about that. But you got to know the time and the place for all of that stuff. I just turned on a function on StreamYard that rounds the corners of my my little camera screen here. I don't know if that makes any difference. Look, there's other buttons I can do too. I can make myself a square. I can make myself a circle. That's weird. I don't like that one. We're going to go back to rectangle. Reminder, everybody, to follow on Twitter at Dan Besbris and at Old Man Squat. And a reminder, if you have comments on anything we talk about on this show, no matter how you take in the pod, I know Spotify actually lets you leave comments, but I never see those ever. They're very hard to find. Go drop the comment on the YouTube side, no matter how you're taking in the show. That's just an easier one for me to find. It gives me alerts, all that good stuff. Subscribe. That's a big one. And again, please like, rate, review, all that good stuff. Everything that you do convinces these systems that my show needs to be seen by more people. So thank you for everything you have done. Thank you for everything that you are still doing. Quick recap on all the names here. Again, I'll just read them off rapid fire. They are James Harden, Freddie VanVleet, Jalen Williams, Tobias Harris, D'Angelo Russell, Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, Ivica Zubac, Mike Conley, and KCP. These are some of my favorite safe, small winners on the board. I think they are fine to take. I know some of those guys in the early going, like a Jalen Williams, a Hartenstein, these are guys that a lot of people are targeting. That doesn't mean that if you miss them, it's the end of the world. I just think these are good, reliable fallback options as you work your way through your draft. If maybe you're not getting the dude that you think is the big leaper, if your queue gets emptied out, feel free to take these dudes. Don't worry about it. Other teams might laugh at you. They're like, he took a boring dude. Doesn't matter. Your team doesn't need to be the most exciting to win. Coming up later on today, I'm debating between a few show topics. I had a tweet that went out asking what people wanted to hear. I think we might do a little player A versus player B kind of thing. That's a big... I don't do shows like that very often, but it seems like everybody is, and everybody loves them, so it also feels kind of dumb if I don't. Shout out, I think the In This League guys were the first to do those player A, player B type fight shows. And that's become totally common show type now. Really fun. And yet I haven't done them. I don't know. Anyway, I'm doing more shows this run up, so more opportunities to try some new stuff here on the pod. Again, I'm Dan Besbris for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'll leave the list up so you guys can check it out for a few seconds after we're done. See you later.